Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Joining us now to review some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Arise News analyst Emmanuel Efeni. Good morning, Emmanuel.
Good morning, Ruben. Good morning, Tundu. Good morning, Leila. Well, we start with these day newspapers where the lead story with 2019 presidential election settled. Race for 2023 begins. Tinubu, Osinbajo, Fayemi, Bakari, Tambuwal, El-Rufai, Jega, Obi in contest. Start consultations. Yes, we expected this, Ruben, Tundu, Leila, that with the 2019 presidential election effectively behind us, all eyes are focused on the 2023 presidential election and the likely candidates, these names mentioned, staking their claims or being put forward, if you like, because politicians tell you that we are being urged by our people, but consultations are on. Ruben, if you were to pick somebody ahead of 2023.
I'm not picking because the field is still open. Yeah. There will be. It's not just the early starters that may end up as the, the final candidates. And don't forget that in the last election we had over 70 political parties, over 70 presidential candidates. So more persons will come. But I think that the issue, of course, is that not just in Nigeria but anywhere, the race for the next election starts immediately a particular election ends. And I assume that, after the end of the 2019 general elections, even long before, the ruling by the Supreme Court on the presidential election, there will be people who were already doing their permutations, who were already preparing. Even my good self sitting here, we're already looking towards 2023 and what is possible.
I did not want to drag you into the conversation.
So you start planning.
Drag yourself into the conversation. I know you're a politician. So, at least that's your other job.
So you start planning ahead.
Yes.
And this is good. I think it's interesting. The more the merrier. But what is important is, for the Nigerian system to provide a level playing field for everybody. Already some people are saying in 2023, they will hold on to power or they will grab power by force.
Yes.
It's that desperation within the political class that is the problem in Nigeria. People see politics as a full-time profession. It should not be a profession. It should be a vocation. It should be an opportunity to serve, not, a source of livelihood. And then secondly, of course, we still need to worry more about deepening our electoral system, which is one subject we had talked about this morning on this program with regard to Kogi and Bayelsa State gubernatorial elections on November 16. That should be more of the focus. But of course, it is proper for people to have ambition. At the end of the day, the choice of the average Nigerian, of the voter, is what must be respected. Because we are beginning to reach a level now where people think that Nigerian elections can be manipulated if you have a bullion van at your disposal, rather than your voter's card.
A war chest, to use a general term, because that bullion van seems to be particular.
No.
A war chest.
No, I'm just talking straight.
Okay.
Don't decontextualize my statement for your own purpose.
Well, two issues will continue to drive this campaign for who will become president. One, who will President Buhari anoint? He said he's not anointing anybody because if he does that now, maybe we'll do it in the future, that person will become a target. Two, will the presidency move from the north to the south or to the southeast as there is this general clamor?
No, what should be available is a level playing field for everybody. In fact, the president can come from Benue or Plateau State, for all I care. We must be insisting on merit, on capacity.
Are you talking about Utopia or Nigeria?
No, I'm talking... Efeni. No, I'm talking about what is
anywhere. We don't bother.
I'm talking about what is ideal.
We bother about where the president comes from in this country.
No, we should talk about a meritocracy. rather than, you know...
Because there's merit in every zone. You can dig merit from every zone.
That is in an idealistic mood this morning.
No, we should insist on the ideals. We should not insist on the status quo.
Even if the ideal is very far.
It would be nice for the ideals to be the practicals, but they just never are.
Okay, talking about the ideal and not the ideal. Today, let's turn to the back page of this day newspaper. And you ask why. You see, it is not every day the chief of staff to the president, Abba Kyari, makes his views. And if you read this piece, you say it's excitement public. But that is exactly what we have on the back page of this day. Towards a new deal for Nigeria, talking about the amended offshore and inland basin production sharing contract act, which the National Assembly has just successfully amended to benefit Nigeria, as the earlier law states that this kind of review should happen periodically so that Nigeria can benefit from its wealth in the deep offshore. And in this piece, he is actually celebrating the fact that Nigeria has been able to pull this through, which will bring as much as $1 billion into the national coffers every year. But it's also celebrating the cooperation between the National Assembly and the executive, which has brought about this amendment to the benefit of Nigerians. But one thing he seemed to have also overlooked, while he's saying that there's been effort over the years, contrary to what we have been saying, that we've been sleeping on our rights.
Yeah, so that jumped out at me. That in 2023, the companies did not increase it because of the business as usual lobby.
Yes, and that there's been efforts in the past because we've been blaming all governments for sleeping on our rights. But I think some clarification, that's some insight from this piece, that indeed there's been effort which has been thwarted by perhaps these oil majors with their lobby. But one thing perhaps he also overlooked is that we must give credit to the Rivers State government that literally dragged the federal government to court.
Not just
to seek this.
There were three parties.
Not just Rivers State.
And,
because the proper citation of the case is Attorney General of Rivers and two others versus Attorney General of the Federation.
That is the beginning of
which
this,
catalyzed what has happened today. Well, I mean, Abba Kyari, don't express any surprise that he has written a piece on the subject.
With so much excitement.
Apart from his experience, as an intellectual and Oxford trained, and as a banker, he's also an essayist, and I'm surprised that this essay is short, because I've been privileged to process his essays in the past for publication. He's, somebody who thinks in an expansive and exploratory manner, and he's a very accomplished essayist, and you can see his talent on display even in this short piece, the shortest from him that I've ever read in the last 2 decades. But I think, straight to the point, I think one, it raises a number of issues. You talked about the partnership between the federal government and the National Assembly, and how the president partnered with this Ninth National Assembly. And I think that the Ninth National Assembly deserves commendation for acting in the national interest. And the concurrence that we have seen between the Senate and the House of Reps is also something that is remarkable. And it says that this is the first time we have seen that, for quite a while.
Since 1999. I don't seem to agree with that.
And his article is an indication that President Buhari would expeditiously give his assent. Two, the point that you and Tundu raised earlier about the fact that we had expressed concern that maybe Nigeria was sleeping on its rights. It makes it clear that, in fact, attempts had been made in the past to get the OICs, the oil majors, to, abide by the terms of agreement in the, Production Sharing Contracts Act, specifically Section 16, subsection 1, which says that once the price goes beyond $20, then, you have to review the royalties. Now, what you see there is now he putting the blame completely on the IOCs. And he says that they didn't only refuse to accept any changes, the business as usual lobby made sure that every attempt until now to amend the law ended in failure. Now, who are those people who are responsible for that business?
For what?
For that business as usual. And you will recall that when we discussed this subject with Dr. Fawibe, who has been in the oil and gas industry for 50 years, we had asked him whether, in fact, there may be need for, a thorough investigation to see that, maybe some persons acted against the national interest. And you pointed out that the law itself, has such a provision.
Yes.
He did not go that far, but he has raised that issue. Then he raised the issue about contractual anachronism, which is a phrase in the fifth paragraph of his piece. Now, why do we always have this problem of contractual anachronism in Nigeria? That is a follow-up question, that needs to be asked. Then, of course, he goes straight to the point about ensuring greater transparency in the oil and gas sector. If we can help him stretch it further, we're talking about transparency, in fact, in the whole of the extractive industry, which is a point that has been made repeatedly by Nati.
When I was reading that portion,
yes.
For once I had to check which Abakari is writing, whether it's the MD of the NNPC, Mele Abakari, or...
No, I told you he's primarily an essayist and an intellectual.
Went technical.
No, he's primarily an essayist and an intellectual. Okay. This one he's doing as chief of staff is just another assignment. So you will expect him some level of forthrightness from him. But in any case, do you have other stories for us?
Well, we'll move on to the Guardian newspaper. Government stops salaries of ASU, orders over IPPIS. Union suspends planned strike, proposes alternative pay system. I think I like this. For once, ASU as a body, they are sounding, acting intellectual.
Well, Efeni, we need to take a short commercial break. When we return, we'll continue with the review of the headlines of the newspapers. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Emmanuel Efeni, Arise News analyst, is still here in the studio with us, and we were going on to other topics of discussion.
Yes, we're talking about we're at ASU, government, the Guardian newspaper, government stops salaries of ASU, orders over IPPIS. Union suspends planned strike, proposes alternative pay system. And I was just commending ASU for not going the strike route this time.
My problem with the headline is that, there's nowhere in the story that ASU is expressly quoted as having suspended the planned strike. Could it be that the sub-editor yanked off that part of the story?
Maybe.
Yeah, because it contradicts, the other story we took earlier, where the Minister of Labour and Employment, Ngige, had something different to say.
Maybe let's move over to other newspapers who are also reporting this story. Well, I think other papers seem to have played down the ASU story. But if indeed they have suspended strike because the Guardian is saying that they are proposing alternative pay system, then that would be something I think I also welcome.
But even the story does not talk about that alternative pay system.
Maybe they're still working on it.
No, the headline cannot contradict the story. But there's a problem there.
Journalism 101.
101.
Anyway, if you have any other
Okay, let's move on to the issues. The Vanguard newspaper uproar as Army insists on Operation Identify Yourself. Why all Nigerians must identify themselves through OPI, Army. We are finally in a dictatorship, Afeni Fere. It's to intimidate Nigerians. Middle Belt Forum, not Army's job, says Junaid Mohammed. It's ill-conceived, says Christian Association of Nigeria. Will mobilize against it, vows Pandev, says it's unnecessary. Other newspapers are reporting similar story. The Nation newspaper, why Operation Show Your ID must go on by military. It's intelligence-led its intelligence led to identify fleeing Boko Haram suspects. Plan open to abuse, says reps. While the Punch newspaper also reporting similar story, Operation Positive Identification. We are after cross-border bandits, says military. Any means of identification acceptable, says Buratai. Army special exercises violate citizens' rights, Falana.
Falana has in fact gone to court.
Yes.
To say that this is against the Charter on Human Rights, People and Human Rights, and it's also a violation of the freedom of movement under the Nigerian Constitution. But generally, I think the point we have made very clear on this program is that, look, whereas Section 305, Section 217 of the Constitution, and Section 8 subsection 1 of the Armed Forces Act say that, look, the military can be involved in internal security operations at the behest of the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. It's usually for specific assignments for limited period. They come in, they assist other agencies, and they withdraw. Their original mandate is defending the sovereignty of Nigeria. And we have seen in critical situations, the Odi massacre, the Civil War, the Just crisis, the Ife Modakeke crisis, where in extraordinary situations they were brought in. But where the problem is, the anomaly is that over the years, we have seen the military expanding, taking over the job of the police, and they seem to be enjoying it. So there's some kind of megalomania, at the highest levels, because it's like the Nigerian military wants to take over the job of the police. They want to take over the job of immigration. If you must check identification, let police and immigration do it. But this arrogance about how they will do it, I think we should go directly to the Commander-in-Chief, to whom the armed forces are answerable, and that President Buhari should listen to the concerns of Nigerians, of the representatives of the people in the National Assembly, and modify the nature or extent of the involvement of the Nigerian military in internal security operations. Because what we're seeing is that they are beginning to go beyond their mandate and extending it on their own. And they cannot go on a frolic of their own. And it's the Commander-in-Chief who has the responsibility to put the necessary checks.
At the time, we need all that the military can offer in bringing an end to terrorism.
Exactly. Did you hear what I said?
They are excited and being very comfortable doing internal security job. That is unacceptable.
In the sort of aftermath of the death of al-Baghdadi, ISIS has said that their cells in Africa are growing. What does that tell you? It's really frightening. And here our military is wanting to do stop and search.
To be asking for driver's license.
And isn't it Putin? Didn't Putin also say in Russia that over 2,000 people, over 2,000 IS members have joined fighters here in Nigeria in what? Was it the past year?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Specifically, our cells in Africa are growing. So this, for me, is ridiculous.
They have more than enough to occupy them.
Yes.
Rather than stopping Efeni on the road. That's why he's riding the car.
We have a Nigerian Immigration Service. We have a police force.
True. Yeah. Now, let's move on to other stories. The Daily Independent, why we are holding military operations nationwide, Burata, lead story. But beside the photograph, there is a story. Ganduje considers death penalty for kidnappers in Kano. As state shuts down child torture center, rescues 36 inmates. Death penalty for kidnappers.
Why not?
Why not? At a time, death penalty is no longer fashionable around the world.
It's not, and I'm actually personally against the death penalty, but we have this problem that's growing out of control. If at all you do believe that harsher penalties deter crime, which, the jury is still out on that, if that's what he's trying to say, we could try it. Personally, I'm against it, but I'm looking at all the niceties. When you look at the actual scourge that these people are creating, then hang them by the neck, frankly.
I'm very against the death penalty, but what it is for me is I think that this is a situation where he should also be looking at ways in which we should stop the kidnapping to even begin with. We never actually look at the solutions to problems more than we look at how we can then go about curing the problems that occur.
No, if we can get a deterrent is also a solution. No?
No, that's what I'm saying. But do we have to go as far as capital punishment when we're not getting it as right as we can from the get-go, which is actually strengthening our security agencies, providing good welfare for our citizens, and focusing on the actual measures that are going to stop the problem of kidnapping that is so prevalent in Nigeria today, rather than running to how we're then going to go about the problem when it occurs and focusing on the death
True,
penalty.
but for me, you can walk and chew gum at the same time. You can address both angles.
Fair.
Yeah.
Ruben, you support the death penalty in any way for
Well,
kidnappers?
you know, the death penalty is very controversial, and the research indicates that, you know, death penalty does not necessarily check crime. But I think that the major responsibility for Nigeria at all levels, state or federal, is to ensure that we do a lot more to check crime, you know, to prevent crime, you know, and to ensure that persons, you know, do not have this opportunity for impunity. It's like anybody who wants to commit a crime, whether banditry or kidnapping or what do they call this, internet fraud. Yeah. It's just, you know, at liberty. And you cannot have a country where people just do what they like. The whole point about the rule of law is to make sure that people do not behave as if they are at the level of animals.
Well, for me, look at Rodrigo Duterte. We all sat here going, oh, how dreadful, how appalling. He's killing all these drug dealers. Their drug rate, the crime rate for drug-related offences has crashed. It works, and
Duterte is a very extreme.
Yeah, he is. But sometimes extreme measures. I'm sorry. Until
left to him, he will kill everybody.
Yeah, well, if you're a criminal. I mean, we all were appalled until we started getting results. I am against the death penalty, but I must say a bit of hypocrisy creeps into people's personal perspectives. Unless and until, God forbid, somebody close to you is a victim of crime, then you find, as happened in my case, when somebody was actually convicted of the murder of somebody that I held dear, I was like, yes. Kill them. I totally was. I never knew I had that instinct until that happened. So now I'm just like, on the topic of death penalty, I'm not able to stand on a soapbox. I'm really not.
Like the U.S. man who forgave the killer of the brother?
No.
Okay.
And went and gave a hug? No.
Yes.
No, absolutely not.
She's committed to the Mosaic law. An eye for an eye. Blood for blood.
Well, we Christians don't go that route.
No, please, don't bring Christianity.
Talking to her.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Let's move on to other subjects. Daily Telegraph. Debt servicing go up 8 trillion as federal government seeks more loans. 7.9 trillion naira, the total amount spent on debt servicing in 5 years. Huge amounts, yet we are still looking for more loans.
Well, the controversial argument by government officials is that our debt to GDP ratio is still very low, and because of that, you know, we still have more room to borrow. But, you know, many analysts do not agree with this. Secondly, if you look at the 2020 budget, I think debt service is about 24%, you know, of the budget proposal, which in itself is a lot. But the third question that Nigerians ask is that, yes, we keep borrowing. We're even looking towards the Americans to see if we can still grab a portion of $60 billion that is available for developing countries. But what do we do with these loans? What is the accountability ratio? We just hear about borrowing money, but we can't measure it in terms of output. And that's the big question about debt, you know, about loans. You know, what do you do with it?
Yeah. Yes, if we go to the foreign newspapers outside the shores of Nigeria, the Guardian newspaper, BAT, that's British American Tobacco, faces landmark legal case over Malawian families' poverty wages. Yes, the human rights body groups, they are taking the BAT to court in the UK for children who work with their parents. Of course, they did not get any pay for that, and they're seeking compensation for these children over the years. BAT is saying that, look, we asked the parents not to allow children to work with them on the farm, but the wages paid to these parents is so small that they need to work large acreage in order to make more money. Hence, they have to bring their children to work with them.
This is disgusting.
If this case is successful, it can affect as many as 15,000 children. And I think it's a case that is worth pursuing.
Absolutely, and we overlook the tobacco industry. We look at like Nike. There was that scandal of the slave wages the children in China were being paid. We look at the clothing industry, fair trade, but we overlook the tobacco industry, and it's actually more than 15,000 all over the world. It's 1.3 million children working on tobacco farms. These children have dreams. They want an education, but they're deprived of that. It's awful.
It's disgusting.
DHS in Nigeria, they also have to look at what they are doing.
We do.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Efeni.
Well, thank you very much, Emmanuel Efeni.